Hello and welcome to today's Visible Thread webinar. My name is Micheál McGrath. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Visible Thread, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome everyone here today. We have a huge audience, which is fabulous. We have people from all over the world joining us today, so good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you've joined us, and we're really, really appreciative of your time. We've got an excellent webinar today. We've got Marika Bland and we have Hong Ah Do, two incredible professionals who've had a long career across multiple organizations. And they're going to share a little bit about their journey as proposal managers and proposal leaders. They're going to talk about AI and talk about technology, but also some life lessons that they have learned along the way. And I've worked with both of them over the last couple of weeks and months, and they are just fabulous. They are two real powerhouses of the industry, and we're delighted to have them here today. So Marika and Hong Ah, how are you today?
Doing well.
Good. Super excited.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you both for joining us. Before I start, a little bit of housekeeping just to start the ball rolling. This is going to be a bit of a casual session. We have some questions that we've discussed beforehand that we want to get through, but we especially want questions from the audience. So there is a Q&A box and an attendee chat on the screen. Feel free to get involved in those. Ask questions at any point. If it makes sense at the time, we'll answer it there and then. But certainly we'll allow a little time at the end to answer questions. Also, we have some interactive polls throughout the sessions as well. So if you want to get involved in that, that'd be fabulous too. So we can learn a little bit about the audience as well. So we'll start off really briefly, just to introduce ourselves. Marika, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit, who you are and where you're coming from?
Yes, thank you. So my name is Marika Bland. I am the Director of Proposals at KMS Solutions. I've been in proposal development for over 10 years. I am an APAMP 40 under 40 awardee, and I'm practitioner certified. I have a couple micro certs. I'm also a graduate of the Leadership Academy, and I am the current NCA conference co-chair for the local chapter. And I'm also Shipley certified. So I've been in proposals forever. I've worn a bunch of different hats. So I'm looking forward to sharing what knowledge I can with folks and taking questions from everyone as well.
And Hong Ah, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, I'll introduce myself a little bit. My name is Hong Ah Do. I am the Proposal Operations Director at IBM. I've been in proposals, specifically federal proposals, for I think 11 years now, some kind of scary double-digit number like that. And I am also an APMP 40 under 40 awardee. I'm also practitioner certified and a Leadership Academy graduate. I am lucky enough to be on the board with Marika this year as the marketing and social media co-chair for the APMP NCA chapter. So I actually started out as a graphic designer, and I've been the writer, I've been the editor, I've been the analyst, I've worn all the hats for proposals in my roles. So it's exciting to be here today and just talk a little bit more about kind of what that trajectory looked like.
I love that. Thank you both for being on this webinar. We have an attendee chat on screen. If you'd like to let us know where you're coming from, or if you want to share LinkedIn profiles to connect with people here, feel free to do so. My name is Micheál McGrath. I'm based here in Cork in Ireland, and I'm CMO of the UK chapter of APMP as well. So there's lots of APMP talk here. If you're looking for information about that, feel free to drop a question in, and we'll all try to support you. But we're going to have a long list of topics that we want to get through today. Everything from career journeys to AI to leadership and influence, etc. But I'll start the ball rolling, Marika, if you don't mind. Could you tell us a little bit about your first role, how you got into proposals, and I'm sure the audience will resonate with you.
Yes, so after I graduated from law school, I was fortunate enough to be in a program that focused on international development. And the first role I had was not proposal specific, but I was a jack of all trades for a small woman-owned business that was contracting work with USAID. So I did everything from back house management, financials, program management, project management, writing, graphic design, which no one should let me do. Smart art is the extent of my graphic design. And that did show in the bids that I supported back then. But I one day was given an RFP thrown at me on my desk and told to respond. So that was really the first experience I had with proposals. And I managed that bid and wrote that response. And after that, I started shifting into proposal writing, but came back to proposal management just based on some of the kind of leadership attributes I had and my attention for detail and compliance. So I shifted back to proposal management there. So that was the very first position. I wore every hat. And I think that was a great introduction to not just proposals, but the whole business development life cycle.
Fabulous. And Hannah, you noted earlier on that you started as a graphic designer. So could you tell us a little bit about your early career?
Yeah. So after I graduated college, I had no idea what proposals were. I accepted a job at a small business to be their graphic designer. And I'll be really honest, I probably didn't know anything else about that company other than they said, we will give you a job. And I said, yes. So when I joined that company, I remember my boss was, he was like, I see that you have a journalism degree. I said, yes, I do. And he said, so you can read and write. And I was like, yes, I can do both. And he went, great. And handed me, my first proposal. It was probably more like 2 or 3 or 5 of whatever was going on at the time. He said, do this. And I said, okay. So that's how I fell into proposals. It probably wasn't until my second, maybe even third job where I actually thought about what I wanted in my career and if proposals was somewhere I wanted to stay. By that point, I had pretty much worn every hat. I was, I had been the proposal team for the last couple companies I'd been at. I was their designer, I was their editor, I was their DDP, I did their graphics, but I was also the entire graphics department for these companies too. So my manager sat me down and she said, look, you have 2 very great paths and you have a lot of potential for both. This is a good time for you to think about what you want to pursue career-wise and where you want to go. And that was really where I kind of sat down and thought about it more seriously for the first time. And maybe it was because of my journalism background, but something about the chaos of proposals, and probably because I wasn't a stranger to brutal deadlines and wanting to, pull your hair out, but it worked for me. And I realized that I really genuinely enjoyed it. The other piece that just was exciting for me in all of it was every proposal was kind of like getting a crash course in a new agency, a new technology. And it was, whether I wanted to or not, I learned so much about an industry that I'd really never thought that much about before. So that's how I ended up in proposals, and clearly something worked because I'm still here. But it's, even though it's not something that I necessarily chose or planned for, I wouldn't go back to change anything.
Fabulous. Well, you two are awesome. Okay, so this is why we picked both of these ladies to be on today. They have such a wide background, and you've obviously gone through kind of a stepladder approach in terms of doing multiple different functions within the proposal umbrella. But was there a moment or a focus with yourself, Marika, around leadership when you moved more into a leader-based role within the organizations you work with? Was there kind of a moment there that drove you into more management, leadership, kind of seat at the table type role?
Yes. So I worked at an organization. It was probably one of the first ones where I realized proposals were strategic responses. They weren't simply administrative. I think that's a misnomer a lot of proposals and proposal professionals get, is we just format things, we set up pretty templates, we make things look nice, and it's an administrative and admin type of function. But it was the first job where I learned how strategic proposals were, and that organization truly valued proposals from the top down. It was not simply just proposals are important to the proposal department, but they were important to the capture, business development, and higher up executive leadership. So that was the first organization where I felt like, okay, proposals has a seat at the table, and I can be at that table. I can sit at the table with those folks and, you know, preach the good word about how great proposals are and the importance of them. But that was when I first learned I wanted to also mentor people in proposals. You know, my first position with proposals, and I think Hung Ah was even mentioning how you get an RFP thrown at you and told to respond. And I think that resonates with a lot of proposal professionals. That's how we jumped into this, as we got thrown something. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted people to look at proposals as an option, not just a force function of a career. And I wanted to mentor people. And I was fortunate then that a position kind of opened up to mentor proposal developers or coordinators. And so I led that team and helped mentor them on the different aspects of proposals, but also their different career options, whether that be proposal writing or proposal management. But that was the first role where I took a leadership step in not just managing bids, but helping manage people and their career progressions.
And Hannah, do you have a similar story in terms of moving into the more leadership step?
Yeah, no, everything Marika said, I think to just really like pinpoint one thing is that what she said about, you know, proposals aren't always seen as strategic partners. And, you know, we absolutely are. You know, I agree with everything that she said. The one thing that I'll add from my end is there was a point for me where, I mean, the proposals that I still remember aren't necessarily the ones that went smoothly or perfect, or, you know, it wasn't stressful. It's the ones I remember are the ones that were really hard, but I remember being in an office with other people, just being in the trenches together. Sometimes it was me and my capture manager. Sometimes it was me, my boss, and, you know, the few saintly SMEs who stuck around because they went, oh God, we got to get this done. And it was watching the best teams that I'd had the pleasure of working with stay resilient when things feel like they're falling apart. And then walking out the door going, wow, that like that was rough, but still feeling good about what we'd done together. That's when I started noticing like, hey, I could improve this, or this could be better. And when I started kind of looking at process and things that way, and forming, you know, not just opinions, but also understanding and knowing what I could introduce reasonably and where to improve a process, it making something better started feeling like a game. And, you know, how do I make this easier? How do I turn this stressful profession into something that my team can feel good about? And how do I build an environment where people are able to do their best work? I think that was, you know, that was kind of the moment for me where I said, I want to do more.
Fabulous. And just while it's on screen right now, just to get a kind of a gauge of the people that are in the audience, and that might help us organize the questions going forward in terms of what level to talk about and what experiences to draw into. You can actually click the slides. So right on the screen right now, if you want to click where you are in your proposal career, that'd really help us, and I'll bring up the answers in just a second. I suppose making the shift from, I suppose, an ordinary proposal manager or writer or graphic designer to a leadership role, was there challenges, or was there anything that you had to change about yourself going into those roles? Did you have to drop the tacticalness? And maybe Marika, I might start with you. Was there anything that you had to, okay, I can't do that anymore because I have all these other responsibilities to do. What do you think?
I think that is one of the challenges, right? As you shift into a leadership role, sometimes you still have to manage bids, right? For example. And I think that became one of the lower priorities sometimes, especially, you know, when you have a larger organization that you're managing or working with. You kind of have to shift into, I'm managing people and their careers versus I'm managing proposals. And I think that's a difference sometimes, as shifting into that leadership role and having to sometimes know when to put on the hat of I have to do both because it is a challenge to take up all that brain space. Proposals are so detail oriented and compliance focused. It's hard to have to shift gears between things. So I think there were days where I had to just focus on the teams that I manage and the people that I had working with me. And then other times I had to focus on the bid and the opportunity or the process updates that we were working on, because they are such different hats. So that is a challenge. And sometimes, I've realized in my current role, I did miss some aspects of proposal management, which sounds probably a little crazy. I'm excited to build a compliance matrix and doing things like that. So it's interesting. The things I thought I would lose a little bit in leadership, I've kind of gotten back in this position, and it's nice because I found that kind of joy for proposals again. But it is different. You have to shift that expectation because you've got to focus on your team first.
Yeah, and if you look at the audience, the majority of the people that like 60% or so, a little bit higher, even 70% or so of people sitting are in the kind of the middle of their career, where they're kind of a senior lead or they're in the mid-level role right now. Just a small sector just starting out or have found themselves at a more executive level. Do you have any, just based on what we've talked upon, Hung Ah, is there any advice that you would give to people that are in that kind of middle section of their careers right now, or 3 to 4 years in or a little bit higher?
Yeah, I think for me, the piece of advice that kind of comes to mind, and this is something that my manager at the time told me when I was kind of in that area. I wasn't completely decided about what my next step was. I was still building my skills. I knew I wanted more, but I didn't really know what. And I remember what she told me was, when you need to raise a problem or you see an issue, because, it's everyone sees issues or sees things that they don't agree with, come with a solution. And what that taught me was to start thinking in a more strategic way and start thinking more deeply about situations. And what that helped me build the skill of doing was, it took it from just me walking in saying, hey, we have a problem, to, hey, we have a problem, and here's how I think we can fix it. And what I noticed more, and I mean, it worked for me because I noticed I started being asked more for my opinion. And Hung Ah, what do you think? What do you think we should do? Or, Hung Ah, do you have concerns? And something in there clicked for me where I was like, I enjoy this. Like I enjoy being able to have these conversations, and I felt like a door had opened up for me. So if you're, in a position where, you're still building those skills, you're working up to it, you don't have to decide anything immediately right now. You don't have to know this is what I want. This is the only thing I'm ever going to want. You can change your mind, but take the time to explore, take the time to learn. Learn more skills for yourself and for your own career development. Obviously use those in your roles with your teams and give back in that way. But the skills and the time that you take for yourself to build your career and figure out what you want for you, those go, those move into life with you. They go with you. So I think that was a little bit of a roundabout, kind of touched a lot of things in a lot of different places, but I think it's a great place to be, kind of in that spot of, I still have room to grow and I have options.
I love it. And I can see in the attendee chart, I can see the love hearts going and people resonating with both of you. So that's fabulous. And we have such a wide audience today from both East and West Coast US, but also London and Poland and Oklahoma and the US as well, but all over the place. So this is a great audience that we have here. Any questions that you want to send directly in, feel free to do so. But Marika, I definitely want to touch upon one thing with you. You have done, you've made a change. You have moved roles, or you've moved organizations very recently. How is that process? That can be quite daunting, and a lot of people, might find that just like they might want to move, or they might feel like they need a change, but it can be a big step for some people, and you've recently done that.
It is. It was a scary moment. It was one of those thoughts, leaving an organization is always, especially if you've been somewhere for some period of time, there's a level of comfort you have staying, right? It's harder to leave versus staying. And I had concerns, I wasn't sure if I was ready to leave, if I wanted to leave, if this would be the position. But I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who I was discussing this opportunity with at the time, and should I stay, should I go? And she reminded me and encouraged me and said, go ahead, take it. I've, in my entire career, I've made changes or shifts that were scary or challenging and maybe a bit, shooting a bit above my weight class, so to speak, right? I wanted to take on those new challenges and opportunities. And I think this was the right kind of opportunity for the moment presented to me. I know with the current kind of climate we're all in right now with proposals, we're, I think, sometimes a little scared to make a change right now. I have a mentee that I've been working with, and she was nervous about taking something on. She didn't feel comfortable in her role. She was unhappy, but she was comfortable, right? She thought she could just stay stuck and it would be okay. And that's never okay to stay stuck. I always wanted to grow. So I'm trying to model that myself. So I did make that change, which was hard, but having that ability to leave, and that, I was very fortunate to have that chance. And I would encourage folks, if there's an opportunity, whether it's in your organization or outside of it, to take a look. Don't just close yourself off to opportunities because they might seem scary or challenging. So that was so far it's been a wonderful decision for me, and it's been a growth opportunity. So that's been great where I've been at. Yeah.
Fabulous. And Hannah, you are currently with IBM, huge organization, and the proposal, yes, and we the scale. Every time I talk to you, the scale is kind of a lot to fathom. But I'd imagine in a role like in an organization like IBM, change is frequent because there's so much going on. You've such a large workload, and you're a leader within that. Do you have any tips for dealing with change that might happen even internally, and that you just kind of have to roll with a little bit?
Oh, I mean, I wish I had some magical answer for, how to make change painless every single time. But I think, what I kind of go back to, because I think it's easy to think of it that way of how do I make this perfect? Or how do I make this, just work? And chances are it's not going to. As human beings, even the most well-adjusted people, people don't always jump at change. They don't love change every single time, especially when you get into bigger organizations where they've had processes. And there are people who have been there and a part of these processes for a really long time. Like small businesses and big companies, they have parallels, but the same pains they feel differently at a different scale. When you introduce change or you're trying to navigate it, I think as a leader, something that is really easy to forget is that before you kind of jump in and go, oh, I can make this better. Oh, I can fix this. Let me do this. You have to understand all the people that have been doing it a certain way. And you have to go a step further and understand why they've been doing it a certain way. And I think sometimes a lot of us forget to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. It's easy to, with the best intentions, want to just make something better. But often what happens is you step, on the people doing the work. And that's really what matters. Like your ideas can be the best and perfect and all this stuff, but even the best perfect ideas, not everyone is going to accept it immediately. Most people are going to resist it. But when you're able to show people like, hey, we're going to figure this out together and take it a step at a time and address, I understand you're nervous. I understand that you don't trust this. I get that you're scared. And you start there instead of going, no, it'll be fine. That's how you make change manageable instead of just daunting.
That's wonderful. And I think it's a perfect segue as well, because we've done a lot of content on AI, and we could talk today about efficiency improvements or technology improvements. This is what you can do this in X amount of hours, and it's much quicker than doing it the manual way. We could talk about that all day long. But what I think is less talk about, and I feel like you have dealt with it in the trenches, is trying to handle pushback, or trying to handle pushback versus doing it in a new modern way, or versus doing it in a more traditional way, or just how to invoke a new tooling or a new system or a new way of process amongst your already ready-made team. I know Marike and Honga, you're experts in this because you are technology, really proficient, and you're always looking at different ways of doing things. But how do you manage that innovation versus actually kind of messaging with your team? Marike, maybe joining a new organization, or you've used multiple tools across your different companies. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think AI adoption is big for everyone right now, from small to bigs, and in various parts of their journey. So as I've been shifting to a new organization, it's for me pausing and taking a step back to see where the AI adoption is at and what currently exists first, because I think sometimes the excitement of the AI adoption and wanting a new tool, wanting to make efficiencies, can get folks to kind of sprint ahead, which is great. We should be excited, but sometimes we have to pump the brakes and look at where we're at and what the actual needs are of the organization, because just having AI for the sake of AI is not helpful to anyone. There have been some great examples. We don't want to use AI to give us an answer we already know or a yes, no. We want to use it to do the deep critical thinking. So I know I've been on teams where some folks have been very hesitant. They're worried about what AI is going to take away from their job. Am I using AI to work myself out of a career? And I think what I've found with that discussion is that this isn't about working yourself out of a career. This is about working with AI to make yourself more efficient, because the teams who use AI, whether it's the larger organizations or even mid to size larges, they've figured out a way to use AI to make their proposal teams more efficient. And that adoption does not happen overnight. It takes time. And if you're not starting now, you're kind of putting yourself on the back foot already against those organizations who figured this out. So I know I've spoken a lot about this, including at BPC, but that AI adoption journey starts with you demonstrating the behaviors you want your team to exhibit, but also having those real conversations about what the fears your team are, what they really are, and where AI could help them, and giving them use cases to show them what the efficiencies are, not just here, use a tool and tell me what you think.
Fabulous. Hannah, would you like to double on that a little bit?
Yeah, no, to add to what Marika's already said, and she's going to laugh when I say this, I am a huge AI skeptic. And, I think we have camps of like the AI evangelists and don't get me wrong. I mean, I use it. Doesn't mean I don't use it. Doesn't mean that I hate it. Like, I love it for the things that it's helped me with, particularly when it tells me, let's not put that in that email. I get that you're very passionate. We're going to take that out because you also want to stay employed. I think, to touch on part of your question, Mihal, of, how do you handle kind of that pushback too? And Marika touched on this a little bit as well. Being the AI skeptic that I am, and so hesitant to, in my brain, trust the robots, to do certain things that I'm like, I can do that. When I have leadership or, people on my team even say, I don't like it, like, I'm nervous about it. It's made it easier for me to think through and address and start with really the conversation of, what don't you like about it? Like, why are we uncomfortable? What is making us nervous? And just kind of addressing the emotions behind people just saying, I don't like it, or no, I'm not going to use it. Because to touch on what Marika said earlier, and we hear this a lot, I mean, AI is going to steal our jobs. AI is going to steal our jobs. It's, the AI tools aren't going to steal your job. It's the people who have learned to use them efficiently. Like, that's where the problem is. That's where, people are going to come in and they're going to know how to use these tools better. And that's, something that I remind my teams of. Like, I think we're at a point where the conversation isn't just, do you want to or do you not? It's, you may not prefer it, but you should still learn how to use it. You should still understand it. If anything, for any other AI skeptics out there, know thy enemy, know how these tools work, know what goes into them, know how to use them to, make you and your work shine. Because, at the end of the day, like as useful as AI is not smart. AI is, AI lacks human judgment. So AI should own anything that's high volume, pattern based, and would drain someone's cognitive energy without adding strategic value. But humans are the ones who are always going to own that judgment layer because, understanding a customer's pain points or knowing when to step away from a deal, all of those things are contextual and relational and strategic. And those are things that, an AI tool isn't going to be able to do, at least not yet.
That was so well said. No, that was brilliant. I think if we're to talk about skills that make someone a leader or skills that will help you evolve your role, skepticism is a skill. Like you're a skeptic because you've been burned before. You've had that kind of scar tissue of, oh yeah, we produced something we thought was great and we read it over it once and we submitted it and it came back and it bit us. And I think happy years and that kind of revelation around AI and what you said there about know what goes into it, know how it was built, know how it works. I think that is the journey a lot of proposal teams are on. We get asked a lot in terms of how do you stand out? And we talk about how we build our products and how we merge AI with more traditional building of software. And that's important to us. That's what we believe. But I think in terms of skepticism, and I think it's important. I think it's a nice question as well, Marika, maybe to start. Like, where do you draw the line in terms of what we're willing AI to own and what it must be human first to do this? Do you have an example or a line that you draw when you're doing something there?
I think for me, what I'll let AI platforms do for me sometimes, at least initially, is a summary or a quick, hey, there's a 300-page RFP, or here's section L. Can you give me a summary of the things I should be concerned about as a proposal manager? Give me the highlights I need to send that quick email because I've got my capture manager breathing down my neck because it thinks I can read at a pace of 100 pages a minute, and I need to get this into an email right now. So I use it for a lot of summarization, restructuring of content. I'll even let it do a first pass of an outline. For me, I will still be the skeptic though, and I'm sure at some point, and I'm waiting for the day, but I build my own compliance matrix still. I do still go through that manual process a bit, which is time consuming and tedious, but that's also how I learned the RFP. So that's where, I'll let it do, build my template, build my outline, give me summaries, a lot of high level work, that detail oriented work. I do leave for myself to do still, like compliance matrices, because I think that goes into a lot of something else a little bit is, we don't know what the AI is being prompted with always, right? So I know my prompt I make when I ask the AI tool what to do and what I've told it, what material I've given it. But I don't always know that when I get something back from someone else. So I think that's where the skepticism needs to come in too, is not just what I'm doing with AI and what I will or won't let it do, but when something's potentially created by AI, I need to still question, did they prompt it the same way I would? Did they put the resources in? So that's where I kind of draw the line for that.
Hanga, is there, you spoke about skepticism. Is there an area or an example where you just draw the line and say that I'm human to do this?
I think, that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about that human judgment layer. And Marika touched on a lot of great things too. And just to piggyback a little off of everything that she just said, that dangerous middle is when people trust AI output and treat it like it's a finished product. And that's a lot of what Marika already touched on. And when she, said, like, I still review things, I still look at things, it's, an AI output is not a finished product by any means. It's, it's a draft. And it still needs someone who understands the work behind it, to look at it and, bring in that skepticism and go, okay, like, does this hold water? Is this actually right? Does this actually make sense? And be willing to, like, not look at it in a way of, oh my God, this is perfect and I'm sure everything is fine, but looking at it and go, I'm going to find out what's wrong. I don't trust you. I'm going to figure out if there's anything wrong. There probably is, and looking for it and doing that extra step. And that's something that I do see a lot of people miss, because it's easy to get comfortable in the idea of, oh, it's one less thing for me to do. I'm just going to have it do it, and then I'll send it right out. Like I recently talked to someone about, like, they were kind of playing around with an AI tool, and they had asked it to review evaluation instructions. And as this person was kind of reading through and explaining it to me, I think within the first 5 seconds, I sat there and I was like, "Oh, I would not use this for what you're suggesting at all." And I kind of sat there, and they were like, "Oh, I have to present this," and I was like, "Who are you presenting this to? Why would you present it?" I was like, off the top of my head, in the first like 10 seconds of what you read to me, none of that aligns. So when you stop, when you get too comfortable with, oh, this is just something that makes my life easier, that's when you fall into that trap of thinking that an AI output is a finished product, and it's just as good as, a human judgment, based output.
Yeah, even if you look at the poll that we've just done there with the audience, I think you see a lot of people are in that phase where it isn't central to what they're doing, but it's an add-on, or it's incorporated along the process at some points, where they've found success. Maybe they've found, okay, it really works for this. We're happy to invest in that. But over 75% are in this middle ground where it's still very patchy, and we're embedding a few tools across the workflow. I want to steer a little bit back towards leadership as well. So, and especially because I think we spoke about this a little bit at length in our pre-conversation, which was lots of fun, as the audience could imagine. And we talked about leadership, but we talked a little bit about the bad side of leadership, the bits that nobody warns you about, and that, like, I think, Marika, you had some interesting stories about, okay, no one told me this. Like, no one told me it would be like this. Do you have any, for those aspiring leaders out there who are, but also not to scare them away, but also for leaders that are in the group, they're going, you're not alone. Other people feel like this too. Do you have any thoughts about that? People that you don't get, the areas of leadership you don't get warned about?
Yes, I think there's so many things that you don't get prepared for. I think when you go into leadership, you're excited to help, the parts I like: mentor people, grow people, train people, teach people things, help people grow. All of that is the exciting, fun part that is great and wonderful. But I think the parts that people don't prepare you for are, sometimes the boring things, the tedious things, the time consuming little nitpicky things. I know that at some organizations, I've spent hours out of a day just calming someone's fears on a proposal versus doing, in my opinion, any actual work. I spend half my time, talking to this person to comfort them about this and that. And I don't think you're prepared for that per se. You go from managing proposals on paper, contracts, type language, documents, to managing real people with human emotions and being part of that strategic role and leading. And you're not usually prepared for that, or at least certainly I wasn't. And going into that, managing some of those emotions and fires and not doing some of the proposal work was very different for me. And, you're not prepared always for what that looks like or what people on your team will need, because everyone is a little different. So I think Hagar and I are very fortunate that we have each other, right? We're both in proposals and in a leadership role. So we have ways where we talk and can bounce ideas off each other. What do you think about this? And that's very fortunate to have someone, whether it's in your own organization or your professional network, who you can connect with and talk about some of that hard stuff, or well, how the heck did you deal with this? Or how much time do you spend doing that? Or the other sub part is, leading, being a leader. I think I mentioned this before, is it gets lonely at the top, and you start to not be able to have certain conversations with your team and the people that you work with that, they'd quite understand, or maybe they wouldn't have similar frustrations. So that's certainly a change to go into a leadership role.
Excellent. Hanga, do you have any similar thoughts or take it a different direction?
Yeah, no, I think what Marika brought up about, leadership can be very lonely is something that, we don't talk about a lot. And Mihal, you mentioned it too, like the three of us have had a conversation about the not so fun parts of leadership. And it's easy to, I think, especially when you're lucky enough to have good leadership and good managers, you kind of put them on a pedestal and you're like, oh my gosh, like they have it together. I want to be them. And, what tends to kind of go unnoticed is like there's a lot behind the scenes that you don't know about, and I didn't know a lot of that until I stepped into that role, because I remember being the hot-headed 20-something-year-old sitting there and going, why is my manager doing that? Why won't they do it this way? And something that you learn is how different leadership looks when you're in the driver's seat. And the decisions that you make, most of the time, your teams don't have context for it. And, you should inform them. You should make sure that they know what's going on, but you can't tell them every single little thing. And I think that's where that loneliness kind of creeps in, because here you have a team who depends on you, and you still want to be a part of the team, but you need to learn how to be a part of that team in a very different way, because you do have to be that rock sometimes. And there is a little bit of performed calmness that goes into being in a leadership role. And when you don't have people to lean on and talk about and say, like, I'll call Marika still and be like, I had a really bad day. And, and it's just, it's humanizing. And it's easy to think of leadership as we have to be perfect. And we can't, we don't want to let our teams down. But, it is really hard, if not impossible, just in general, to be perfect. Us as proposal professionals, we want things to be compliant. We want 100% compliance. Like, we want things to be correct. We want things to be perfect. And leadership is something you can't do it that way. So it's easy to, there's a saying in Korean of, when you look at someone, they seem so tough on the outside, and it's a saying that's something along the lines of like, oh, they look like someone where if you poke them, they wouldn't bleed. And I think that's, something that a lot of us, we don't want anyone else to know. It's that, no, if you poke me, I do bleed too. And things hurt me too. Things are hard for me too. And I think that's a conversation that I'm seeing a lot more of and people having openly, which makes me really happy. But I think it's something good for everyone to just keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you said, Hanga, one of the big things I think is in leadership is you think you can give bad news, but giving bad news to somebody is something that I don't think you're ever really prepared for until you do it. And I don't think it gets easier. I know that's the cliche, but giving bad news or talking about the loss or giving someone feedback, all of those things are really, really hard, and I'm glad we talk about them more. And I think something that is invaluable that I think both Hanga and I do well is we admit that we're human, and when mistakes are made and when we've done something wrong, because we want folks to learn from what we've done. We don't want people to make the same mistakes we did or have to go through the trench when they don't need to, when we can, help them where we can. So, being honest, because we're not all perfect, we're human. It's okay to be real about that. And I think that actually builds a stronger leader than someone who pretends everything is perfect all the time and does try to act like that robot. I think you hinder yourself when you try and do that.
No, I agree. That was so well said by both of you. And I suppose we're fortunate that you've worked together in one way. But I'll ask you a question that's a little bit outside, a little bit connected to this. But what maybe Hanga, starting with you, what makes a good colleague? What do you look for in a peer? Because you obviously have a great relationship with Marika.
No, that's a great question. I will answer that by telling everyone about how Marika and I became friends. And it started out by not liking each other. I think that especially, just especially for women, but I think, everyone tends to find themselves in this situation. I think there's an antiquated belief that there isn't enough space at the top, or in order for one person to move up, you have to, you have to punch down. And I think that's something that, again, I feel is very antiquated. I think it's less now, but it still absolutely exists. And I remember, Marika and I, when we first met, there was a situation where it wasn't her fault, it wasn't my fault. And there were communications and things that happened outside of us that we didn't have visibility on. But we both sat there and went, what is she doing? And sat there and went, I don't think I like her. And we got to a point, right? We got to a point where I think I called her, or we were on a call or something, and I went, look, I don't know what I did, but I feel like I'm annoying you. I feel like you have a problem with me. Something is happening here. I don't know what it is. I don't like it. Why? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And we had a very good, it wasn't a fight. I just want to put that out there. It wasn't a fight. We had a very adult conversation of, hey, here's where I'm coming from. This is what I was told. What were you told? Like, where are you coming from? And that's where we kind of realized where some of that miscommunication happened, where things outside of us and decisions had been made without either of us, knowing about it or really having a say. But to the other person, it seemed like, oh, this person's here stepping in my lane. And we've had that same kind of conversation multiple times in the years that we've known each other. And with that, what we learned is that, we build trust between one another, because I don't look at Marika and go, I'm feeling nervous about something, or I'm feeling jealous about something, and go, well, I can't tell her because that means, I'm losing something. Like, it never gets into that. We give each other space for whatever human emotions we have, but we don't hold each other accountable for, hey, this happened. And like, I think specifically, you're going to have colleagues who want the same things as you. And that's, I think, something unique about Marika and I's relationship. And also, I think, could have made it very, very hard for us to ever get along. Our career trajectories and our backgrounds are eerily similar, to the point where we have a running joke that the two of us can't exist in the same room because we're actually secretly the same person. So one of us on this call is a hologram. But I mean, like, you're going to have colleagues who want the same things, and you're going to have colleagues who achieve things that you want either before you do, or maybe, you might never get to do it. And it is okay to feel jealous. It is okay to feel upset. But, and Marika and I have done this for each other, gone, hey, I heard back from this person. Did you? And one of us goes, I haven't yet. But we don't, on one end, it's okay, they're going to have feelings about it, but that's okay. And then on the other is, they're allowed to be excited about this. I'm going to go deal with my feelings, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to be the biggest cheerleader. And it's not easy.
No.
But you do that enough where you build that trust. It's not a one and done thing. And it's not easy. It's not comfortable. But I mean, speaking just from Marika and I, like, it's paid in dividends. Like, now I have someone who not only understands my job, like all of the ins and outs of it. I don't have to say, it's government contracting and grants. Sure. Like, no, she knows everything about what I do. She knows everything about what makes me stay up at night and just scream into the void. But also, we've become friends, and we can rely on each other and trust each other. So having that sounding board, going back to the whole leadership is only, it's embrace the colleagues who want the same things as you, and find ways to support each other and find ways to achieve together. Because it's a myth that you have to, step on someone in order to get what you want.
That was excellent.
Yeah.
Marika, you to respond. Hopefully you've seen
I agree with everything that said. Right. We, how it started, right, to where it got to. And I remember specifically the story Hanga was talking about, and I know she probably didn't overthink it at all, but we both had submitted ideas to speak at BPC, and we didn't tell each other, because you don't, like, if I feel, I can feel quietly because no one will know I submitted an idea to speak, and it's okay. And Hanga had gotten an email where she was selected to speak at BPC, and she sent a message, and I checked my email, and I didn't have the email. And to Hunga's point, like, was it a kick in the gut? Yeah, I was like, oh man, I didn't get chosen. That's okay. I'm going to help her build a practice schedule. I'm going to make sure I've got snacks. So when she does run throughs of her presentation, I'm ready and we're good. I want to help her. I want to be her cheerleader. And, that was okay. And all of that was fine too, because I checked my spam and I was selected to speak too. So then we both got to be each other's cheerleaders, which made it even better. But finding that trust and connection with somebody, that honesty, because again, those are hard conversations. We've had hard conversations where they're not fun and but they weren't mean or directed at each other. And it's okay. You're going to deal with conflict. We're proposal professionals. We deal with conflict every day. Every technical SME who doesn't write a response to their section, every designer who's late on getting a graphic idea back, all of those things are conflict that we deal with all the time already. It's okay to handle that, but being honest, I think, and finding trustworthy colleagues, be honest yourself too, kind of reflect back what you want, because there is enough space to have multiple high functioning proposal professionals everywhere.
Fabulous. There's loads of questions coming in around this, and I'll try and group them all together at the end. That is excellent. I'll move swiftly on, and then we'll round it all off at the end with some questions. But I think we kind of remiss in me, because it is a Visible Thread webinar, and I know both of you have used the product across different organizations, and I actually met both of you in person, which was brilliant. I think that started the fun in Virginia at our forum recently. But Hunga, I know you're a user of Visible Thread. Is there something that or functionality or something that's brought to your team that you've found particularly valuable, or that you see, oh, this works for us?
Yeah, so I've had the pleasure of working with the Visible Thread team since I think around like 2021, 2022, something like that, when I was at Octo. And it's been really, really great watching the tool grow and kind of being able to see different stages of how that tool developed. So I have, I guess, two examples, one a little bit more recent in how we're using the tool, and one that, has been a steadfast fan favorite, which is dot compare. And like I will always be the biggest cheerleader for Visible Thread dot compare, because I haven't found a tool yet that lays out changes, like if you get an amendment or if you get 2 or 3 or 5, like it just lays it out in a way that's so much easier to look at and understand quickly what's changed. And, going back to the whole conversation of find things that make your life easier, but, there are things that AI can kind of do for you. Having that as a tool, I remember when I was running a proposal, it made my life so much easier. It cut down on so much time whenever I would get a new solicitation or a new amendment, and I had to go back and compare it and look at what changed and let everyone else know what changed. Like, I went from doing that all manually and then going, oh my God, I must have missed something, to, it took out several steps. I still checked it, but, I no longer had to be the only one trying to go back and forth and back and forth. And it freed time up for me to then be able to, spend my brain power on the things that I actually had to do and I had to be present for. The more recent one that I'm really excited about is around the compliance matrices. The Visible Thread team, and Marika was still here when they did this for us. The Visible Thread team actually took it a step further, and they built us our own macro, so that not only were we taking advantage of this compliance matrix tool, but we now could have it populate our own template. And that was just, another step that they took out of the process. And again, it freed people up to be able to check something off a little bit faster so that they can be present for the conversations and the meetings and, the proposal lifecycle that they needed to be there for.
I appreciate that. And I think it's a good it's a really good segue in terms of what we were discussing earlier in terms of, understand how it works. Like when we talk about compliance matrices, what Visible Trade we hang our hats on is the precision and accuracy. It's going to be 100%. We don't use AI for that part because AI isn't good at that, or we don't want to create any sort of series of doubt. We want it to be 100% accurate when it's pulling out requirements. But where it's going is with the AI part of it, where we built a macro back in the day and macros work perfectly, now using AI to actually build those templates. And you go, okay, you've given me this compliance matrix, make it into this type of template. And it's trying to blend the two different types of technologies in the right way. And working with people like yourselves over this kind of period of time has allowed us to build the products around your workflows. And so it actually works for what you're doing and fits into that process. And Marika, I know you were at the Visible Trade Forum very recently, and you've seen maybe the way the direction of the product is going into one platform. Is there anything in particular you're excited about?
I'm very excited for the merging of the platform to have Writer with Docs together. That is exciting to me. I know I saw during the VT7 rollout to the prompt library that having it built right into the tool versus the running Word document on my desktop of what prompts do and don't work is invaluable to a team. I think having that all right there is very exciting. So that's part of what I'm excited for. And even the aspect of it pulling down files from, I think, sam.gov and some of the other built-in features of it to have access to those RFP documents immediately, because I know some organizations that can sometimes be a bottleneck. So having access to those files, even within a few hours is great. So I'm looking forward to that. And I actually just this morning even did a doc compare. So I'm a big fan of the Visible Thread doc compare. It is the lifeblood, I think, to me as a proposal manager ever since I was at Octo. That has been, I didn't know what Visible Thread was until then. And I went, wow, I've missed out. I could have saved myself so much pain. So definitely love the doc compare too. So glad that's staying. Yeah.
And you're very close to getting exactly what you want in terms of having the doc compare happen, but AI provides you the summary of what actually happened within the comparison. So you're going to get that merge very, very soon of everything. But I appreciate that. And if anyone has any questions in the chat, happy to take those afterwards too. But there's lots of questions after coming in, and we have about 2 or 3 minutes to kind of sum everything up together. But I think this is a nice one because it kind of sets the scene a little bit in terms of skills and transferable skills. I think it's nice because also people looking for options. So what transferable skills does a proposal manager have to explore career options such as like project management? I think this is great because I think I see this all the time in terms of people stepping away from proposals. Happy for either of you to take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of those skills, communication, clarity, organization, right? We are herders of cats. I think everyone's heard that a few times about proposal managers, is that we herd cats. We manage to a schedule, to deadlines. I think those are some of the biggest skills from proposal management you can take to project management, and clarity in instruction. I think proposal managers are typically very good at sending out very detail-oriented emails about what the ask is, when it's due, what we need, all of that. So I think those are definitely transferable skills to project management. I didn't know if you had any others you want to add to that.
No, I think, I mean, you kind of touched on them too, but just all of that. And also, as a proposal manager working in proposals, like, you work with a variety of people and personalities, and you learn how to deal with people, whether you want to or not. And I think that's, in the moment when things are stressful, it's like, oh my gosh, why is this person doing this and not this? And it's frustrating. But when you do it long enough, you learn how to, talk to people. You learn, and that sounds very simple, but, you don't always have the same proposal team for every single proposal. You might have similar people, but more often than not, you're working with almost completely new teams every single time. And it's a new set of personalities. It's, just new people who don't know you and you don't know them. And when you continue, kind of navigating that challenge, you learn how to adjust really quickly, to speak to people in a way where, even if they're coming at you sideways and they're angry or whatever, you learn how to kind of take that energy and figure out where it's coming from so that you can move work forward. And I mean, I think that's absolutely something transferable when you get into project management.
Fabulous. I might finish on this last question because I think it's interesting. There's about 40% of the people in the audience that said one of the biggest barriers to my leadership progression is my organization doesn't have a clear path. And I think a lot of people fit into that. And many organizations try very hard to try and create career opportunities for people, but it doesn't always fit perfectly. You might just have a lot of good people, or the business isn't there right now. And Marika, first, do you have advice for these type of people who feel stuck because it's not a path in front of them?
Yeah, I've been one of those people who I've felt stuck because there wasn't a clear path, whether that was because I wasn't sure what role I wanted to take in proposals or the size of the organization, right? Sometimes there's not a need for more than one senior proposal manager or another type of leadership proposal professional. And I think if you can find a way to make a path, right, which I know takes a lot of work, that's easier said than done to make a path in your organization. But don't let that hold you back, right? Sometimes you'll see the signs or see the light. I was at an organization that I really enjoyed. I was so happy there. I was never going to leave, to be honest. But I knew that I wasn't going to get where I wanted to in my career, kind of when I wanted to. That opportunity wasn't going to show up, barring someone quitting or leaving. And, I had to make the hard decision and go, well, then I need to go somewhere else where I can have a senior proposal manager title or be a director of proposals. So that's sometimes a really hard decision, but if you can make that path in your organization, I say go heave ho and try to do that. But don't let that stop you from a leadership role if that's really what you want to do.
Hung out, would you double on that?
No, she took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, advocate for yourself. Like I completely agree with both points of, if there isn't a path, that doesn't mean that you can't ask for one or try to make one. Always advocate for yourself. But I mean, the worst that can happen is it doesn't work out, or you're told no. And then what the answer to that. And what, if you want that next step, that is not an option here, what you need to do after. So it's, like she said, it's scary, but sometimes you need to make that leap, because if you stay somewhere where, you've told them, like, I want this and I want this and I want this role and I want these responsibilities, and the answer you keep getting is we just don't have that in our organization right now, all you're doing is just making yourself more frustrated by just continuing to ask the same question of, well, why not? And it's, the answer might change someday, but is it going to change on your timeline? And, you have to take care of you first.
That's a great way to end. Take care of you first is a lovely line to finish on, I think. Marika and Hunga, I just want to thank you so much for your support on this. You've given a ton of wisdom and advice to the community, so thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. If you're in the audience or watching on demand, there is a survey on the right of the screen. We'd love your feedback. We'd love to know what next topics you'd like us to take on. We'd love to understand, did you enjoy this webinar? Did you get benefit from it? But without further ado, I'd just like to thank everybody and look forward to seeing you all at the next webinar. So thank you so much. Thank you, Marika. Thank you, Anya.
Thanks, Mihal.
Thank you.